It was a crisp June morning in 1920, deep in the wilderness of Ontario, Canada, near the Ottawa River. The air was fresh, the sun was just rising over the horizon, and nature was singing its untouched symphony. Two young friends, Albert Coe and his buddy Rod, were quietly gliding along calm waters in their canoe, experiencing the adventure of a lifetime. But Albert had no idea that on this very day, he would cross the boundary between the ordinary and the extraordinary. What started with a muffled cry in the woods became a secret he'd carry for decades. Welcome to the channel, where today we're diving into the incredible story of Albert Coe, an encounter that challenges everything we think we know about our world. Are you ready to uncover another fascinating and mysterious UFO case? But first, don't forget to support the channel. Your support helps us continue creating quality content and bringing you the most incredible stories of alien encounters and abductions. All we ask is that you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Thank you so much. Albert was just a teenager that summer, 16 years old, full of energy and curiosity. He and Rod, his longtime friend, had planned a canoe trip down the Ottawa River, starting at Trout Lake. For days, they paddled, fished, and camped under the stars, lost in the vastness of the Canadian wilderness. It was the kind of adventure that gets your heart racing. The smell of pine in the air, the distant roar of rapids, and the promise of something new around every bend. On the third day, though, the river split into a maze of streams and swamps. A logjam of trees and rocks forced them to stop. They decided to camp and scout the area at dawn to find a way through. Albert, driven by his restless curiosity, took the left side of the terrain while Rod went right. The ground was rough, littered with rocks and thick brush. He was climbing a rocky outcrop, muscles straining, sweat dripping down his forehead, when a sound broke the silence. A faint, desperate cry, almost swallowed by the forest. "Help!" The voice echoed, weak but urgent. Albert froze, his eyes scanning the landscape. No one was in sight. He shouted back, "Who's there? Where are you?" And then, to his right, a reply, "Down here, help me." Albert's heart pounded. He rushed toward the voice, stumbling over roots and bushes, until his eyes landed on a narrow crack in the rock, like a scar in the earth. And there, trapped inside, was a young blond guy, his face pale with pain, one arm waving feebly. Without a second thought, Albert sprang into action. He had ropes from his climb and used his pocket knife to cut down a young tree, rigging up a makeshift lever. "Hang on, I'm getting you out," he yelled, working to free the stranger. With a hard yank, the guy slid out of the crevice, collapsing exhausted onto the ground. His legs were numb, his left hip and leg bleeding, torn up by the rocks. He croaked out a request for water, and Albert dashed to the river, filling his old felt hat to quench the man's thirst. As he bandaged the wounds with torn pieces of his handkerchief, Albert noticed something odd. The stranger was wearing a tight, silver-gray suit that shimmered like silk but felt like leather. No buttons, no zippers. Just a small panel of instruments on his chest, some buttons smashed, others faintly blinking. "Who are you? What are you doing out here?" Albert asked, trying to stay cool. The man, with a faint smile, answered, "My name's Fred. I came to fish. My plane's parked downriver about 400 yards away, in a clearing." Albert frowned. A plane? In this thick forest with no runway? But before he could dig deeper, Fred asked for help getting back to his aircraft. Albert insisted on going along. The terrain was treacherous, and Fred could barely walk. That's when Fred made a weird request. "You've got to promise not to tell anyone about this, not even your friend. My dad built this plane. It's a secret, experimental project." Albert, intrigued but moved by compassion, agreed. And so the two started down the winding path. Fred's arm slung over Albert's shoulder. the mystery growing with every step. The clearing was small, no more than 100 feet across, ringed by towering pines. Albert expected to see a biplane or something familiar, but what he found stopped him cold, his breath caught in his chest. There, in the center, sat a silver disc, about 20 feet wide, propped up on 3 legs like a tripod. No propellers, no wings, no visible engine. Its surface was smooth, windowless, sloping up to a rounded central dome. How did that get here? Albert wondered, eyes wide. Fred, leaning on him, caught the shock. Surprised? He asked, almost teasing. Albert just nodded, speechless. They got closer and Fred pressed a button on his suit's panel. A door slid open at the disc's base, revealing a ladder. With effort, Albert helped Fred climb up. Before disappearing inside, Fred looked down. "I'll never forget what you did for me. Keep your promise. Step back when I take off." Albert retreated to the trees, heart racing. Suddenly, a low hum started, rising to a sharp whistle. The disc quivered slightly, its legs folded in, and it lifted off, hovering for a moment before shooting upward like a bullet, vanishing into the sky. Albert stood there alone, the forest silence creeping back. Was it real? He touched the ground, saw the broken branches, the blood-stained handkerchief. Yeah, it was real. But what had he just witnessed? Months went by. Albert returned to normal life, but that encounter never left his mind. In December 1920, a letter arrived, signed Gzretsim. It invited him to lunch at the McAlpine Hotel. Eager, Albert went. In the lobby, a blond man, now in regular clothes, greeted him. "You look different without the forest mud." It was Fred, or, as he asked to be called, Zret. Over lunch, Zret dodged questions about the plane but asked about Albert's life, his studies, his dreams. Then, in a quiet moment, he locked eyes with Albert and said, "I'm not who you think I am. My real name's Zret. I'm not human. I come from Norca, a planet 12 light-years from Earth, orbiting Tau Ceti." Albert nearly dropped his fork. Zret went on. "We're a small group, here since 1904, watching humanity. We don't interfere, we just observe." He explained that the panel on his suit, damaged in the fall, was his only way to call for help. Without Albert, he'd have died. "You saved my life. That's why I chose you to know the truth." Over the next few years, they met several times. Zret shared stories of Norca, a planet that became uninhabitable 14,000 years ago, forcing his people to explore space. They set up bases on Mars and Venus, but it was Earth where they found a temporary home, blending with early humans. For 5 decades, Albert and Zret kept in touch. Zret offered an alien's perspective on humanity, our progress, our mistakes, our search for meaning. In 1969, Albert published The Shocking Truth, a book blending his story with philosophical musings. He never chased fame or money. He just wanted the world to know. To UFO enthusiasts, Zret was a Nordic, a race of tall, blond, blue-eyed beings tied to the Pleiades or Tau Ceti. Are they humanity's guides? Silent watchers? Albert believed so. Until his death, he guarded the secret carefully but left a legacy that still captivates. A kid, a canoe, and a silver disc that changed his life forever. What Albert Coe saw that day in 1920 remains a mystery. Was it an experimental craft? A visitor from another world? Or just a vivid dream of a young adventurer? That's up to you to decide. If you enjoyed this story, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell. See you on the next journey into the unknown.